So Gwen, what was this like for you? What's your perspective on how did you first kind of get aware of this, and then talk to us about what it was like for you to kind of be a part of this experience?
So he was pretty vague. Like, I didn't know he lost all of his faith. Like, I just knew he had issues. And so
talk about when you first started, how did it happen when you first started?
Well, he said, did you know there's multiple accounts of the first vision? And I said, I think I heard something about that. And he said, does that bother you? I couldn't really give him an answer. Like, I didn't know if it bothered me or not. Like,
right.
I guess it didn't, since I couldn't, give him an answer. So.
Okay. And so then how did it proceed from there? As the believing spouse.
Yeah. So he was like, he continued to fulfill his calling. Like, we were going to mission prep every single week. They stand up and they recite their purpose as a missionary and the first vision. And so, we were hearing that every week. Like, he didn't really let on to the depth that he was struggling. And so I just started praying for him. Like, please God, help him get past this. Help him find his faith again. We can fix this. This isn't a big deal.
So you weren't super worried at first?
Not at first, because I didn't know to the extent. And I just figured, this is kind of like what happened before he got made a bishop. He's just having a rebel stage because he's afraid of what calling is coming next.
Oh, yeah.
He's in the sweet spot right now where his calling is easy, and
he's trying to avoid stake president or mission president calling.
Yes.
Okay.
So that was kind of my feelings about it, and that we would just get through this.
And so so how long did that go? That sort of, it's just a phase.
Probably about a year.
A whole year.
Yeah, but during that year, I started to realize that there was more issues than just the first vision, and he was asking all kinds of questions. He's a deep thinker, and we've always had deep conversations, and particularly around gospel topics and that kind of thing. And so, he would just say stuff like, do you believe all those stories in the Old Testament? And I'd be like, yeah. Really? You think Noah could build an ark and gather up all those animals? Yeah, God can help you do anything. And he would be like, you think they could all fit in a boat? And what about all the food and all the poop? And just, he just, all kinds of just, and don't you think they should find archaeological evidence about all those wars that happened in the Book of Mormon? He just asking us all kinds of questions to just really make us try and think. And we got to the point where we were like, okay, you can say that, but now you have to say something faith promoting.
I try to balance it out.
Yeah. So we would make him say something faithful, and he would come up with things like, this is a beautiful world, or...
Well, it sounds like you weren't like super worried yet. You weren't like traumatized or afraid or angry yet. Is that right?
For the most part, sometimes when it was just he and I and we were having a conversation, it would get to the point where he would start to scare me and I would start to cry. And I would be really worried about it. And I remember the one time when he first told me, this had been going on probably at least a year. He told me that he didn't think that Joseph Smith was a prophet. And I was absolutely devastated when he told me that. Like,
you remember that?
Oh, clearly. We were sitting in the hot tub, and I remember...
in the hot tub.
getting out and just, like, bawling. And he came, and he's like, I'm sorry. And I just remember testifying to him that Joseph Smith is a prophet, come on. Like lean on my faith, I can just lean on me. And then when I realized to the extent, I don't know, I would tell him things like, well, don't worry about that old church history. It doesn't matter. We just got to look at the church today. The church today is good. Look at our beautiful life. Let's just focus on that. If you can't have faith in Joseph Smith, then don't worry about that. Let's have faith in Christ. Let's just worry about the church today.
And that's, we in a long time ago, one of the very early Mormon Stories episodes with Dr. Dave Christian, he talks about validity Mormons and utility Mormons. Validity Mormons are Mormons that care if it's true. Utility Mormons are Mormons that just care if it's good. And it's very common for women to be more utility Mormons on average, and men to be more validity Mormons, where men, if it's not true, game over. For women, as long as it's good, it helps you be a good husband, a good father, it helps our marriage, it helps our kids, it's a good social group, it's a good way to live. Kind of women don't care about the history sometimes, or men, but I mean, is that what you're saying? You were just like,
at that point,
who cares if it's true? Who cares about the history?
I still believed with all my heart that it was true, and that eventually, if he just could focus on what was good and on, it's the whole doubt your doubt, not your faith kind of comments that I was, and I would quote that to him too. Oh my goodness, I was not a very supportive wife, but just if you could just remember your testimony, come on, just remember, that that we can get past this. Like, focus on what you do know, and then your old faith, it can come back. Like, we can fix this.
Yeah.
Because it's true. You'll remember because it's true.
Right. So you were kind of bargaining.
Yeah. Oh, totally bargaining. And then when it came to the point where I realized that, and I don't think that I truly know that he was done, but he would talk about my temple recommend will be expiring in a year or so, and I won't be able to answer those questions. And I needed to be in the temple, and I needed him to be with me in the temple. And I told him, well, all you have to do is you just have to think of a new definition for prophet. You just think in my head, prophet means president of a church. Joseph Smith was that. You can admit that. So you won't have to lie. You can still have your recommend. And he said, I can't do that. And it was hard. It was hard.
That's a natural step to go to Redefining Words to be able to stay in. What are you feeling right now, Jared?
I just remember how hard that was for me to see how difficult it was for her, and it was hard.
Yeah. And when she's pleading for you to just change how you think of words so that you can take her to the temple still, what was that like?
I knew I couldn't.
Why couldn't you?
Because it just isn't authentic to me, and I've never been one, and anybody who knows me knows that I can't fake anything ever. And so to me, I would just be completely living a lie, and I couldn't do that.
Mormonism taught you too well. The truth mattered, right? And that honesty mattered. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you guys might not be able to see this if you're not watching, but they're both crying. So they're being touched. And so are you. So Madison, what are you feeling right now as you hear your parents talk about this?
They've actually never told me the story of the temple recommend, so
oh yeah,
that's pretty sad to me. And that was one of the hardest things, was just seeing what my parents went through and how much it broke their hearts. Like, I mean, they've gone through hell and back with this, and that was definitely hard.
So what was hard about it for you? What were you worrying about? What were you thinking about? What were you feeling?
My dad never really talked to his kids to the extent that he talked to my mom about those things, but with those questions that he would bring up and those concerns, I would honestly be the kid to kind of egg it on, just because I like to have those deep conversations and I enjoyed them. And I would talk to my dad for hours and hours about them, but I just had so much cognitive dissonance that they never really bothered me, I guess. And I never just went near the idea that the church wasn't true. And I never went near the idea that my dad didn't think it was true. But as time went on, he would quit going to, he would always go to sacrament with us, but he would quit going to priesthood meetings, and he would come back to church and pick us up at the end. And that would really bother me. And I just did not, I got really worried about that and why he would not go to his meetings, which seems like such a simple thing. But to me, I just couldn't believe that he was doing that.
Yeah. So what, were you starting to feel scared, angry, sad? What were you feeling?
I was feeling scared and just worried about him. And
scared of what?
Honestly, I don't even because I just
Like that the family would break up, that he'd get depressed, that you wouldn't have your eternal salvation. Can you even put into words?
I think just that we might be going down this path of not being as good of Mormons as we were before, not being as devoted.
Yeah. So you were getting worried.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's not fun. How old were you about this time?
17, 16, around there.
Okay, so by this time you're dating and...
Yeah.
So how's Mormonism for you when you're 16 and 17? Are you loving it? Are you in seminary? Like, how did your relationship with the church progress into your 15, 16, 17-year-old self?
I think as I got older, my testimony was always rooted in Christ and his atonement and God's love. And I always felt that super strongly in my life and had big experiences with that. And so I always held on to those things. But definitely through those couple years that my dad kind of, I could see him getting less lenient or more lenient with the church and the standards of it, I guess. I probably did a little bit as well. I mean, nothing that extreme, kind of like my mom talked about. I would say a few cuss words. I wouldn't read my scriptures, things like that. But I definitely still had a very strong testimony, and that's what I wanted with my life. I wanted to get married in the temple, and I wanted a Mormon family.
Right. Okay, so this is kind of the family starting to get stressed out, and you're starting to feel it as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, did you talk to your siblings about it? Do you remember any reactions from them?
Honestly, it was a super taboo subject in my family.
Okay, so talk about that. You'd think we would all sit down immediately and all talk about it, but how did it end up?
I think we were all just so worried, we didn't want to talk about it. We wanted to act like nothing was happening.
See that? Everyone's acting like nothing is going on.
Yeah.
This is the most significant event to the whole family, the marriage, the thoughts about eternity, the belief, existential, everything is all wrapped into Mormonism. That's falling apart, and the reaction is to not talk about it. Isn't that weird?
It's crazy.
And with your eternal spouse, you can't talk about this thing.
Right.
How is that possible?
Because you went a full year just kind of not wanting to go there, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you and your siblings just didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
How weird is that?
Yeah, it's crazy.
What's that like to know there's a big problem and nobody's talking about it?
It's crazy. And it would cross my mind, maybe I should talk to my dad and be why aren't you going to your meetings? You need to not be doing this. It's so ridiculous. But yeah, I was always too scared to.
Yeah. Okay. Too scared.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do with all those fears and concerns as a kid? What did you do with it all?
Just shoved them in, I guess. Just shelved them.
Was that good for you? Bad for you? Did it matter? Was it okay?
It definitely wasn't healthy.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. What did it do to your own testimony at the time? Did it make it stronger? Did you cling more to the church because he was struggling?
Yeah.
You did?
I think I was definitely digging my heels in just because I could kind of see him slipping away, but I didn't want to accept that. I didn't want to accept that there would ever be any changes in our family or in the church. And so I was just clinging on to those experiences I've had and my relationship that I believed I had with Jesus Christ.
Right. What about, did it affect your relationship? I talked to a father just a couple of weeks ago who had a great relationship with his daughters, and then he has the faith crisis and the daughters pull away and they don't respect him anymore and they don't trust him and they won't talk to him. And it was devastating for this one father to have it just immediately devastate the father-daughter relationship. Did you feel like you wanted to pull away? Did it make you less connected with him?
Definitely on spiritual matters. Well, like I talked about, I would have these deep conversations with him and I really liked them. But as time went on, I was kind of realizing that he had nothing faith promoting, as we said, to say. And I just want so badly for him to just say something faith promoting and just tell me that he still had a testimony, because even though I didn't ever tell myself, no, he doesn't have a testimony, I just wanted that validation and I didn't get that. And so for at least for spirit, a spiritual side, I definitely felt less connected to him.
Okay. Jared or Gwen, do either of you feel like the kids were noticing? Did either of you start worrying about the kids? Did either of you feel the relationship between Jared and the kids change?
Not necessarily. There was a time when we were visiting our oldest son in his home, and he said, "When's Dad going to get over this whole faith crisis thing?" And so, there was that. But like Madison said, for the most part, we just didn't talk about it, and we just tried to live in the now and not worry about it too much. So it was definitely very difficult for everybody involved.
And at that time, were 3 of our kids already married or just 2?
I think 3.
So they were not living in the house, but they still would notice things and they would comment to you every once in a while.
Yeah, they would. The ones that they would mention it. So
did you notice things fraying, Jared? How did you start feeling about your relationship with your kids?
I didn't really notice that at all. I still felt like everything was good, and we've always had a great family relationship and a family dynamic that I thought was special and good. So I didn't notice that. I didn't feel that. I talked to them about some issues a lot of times, and so they definitely knew that I was struggling with things. But I didn't feel like there was any lack of respect or lack of love or anything like that.
Okay, good. Okay, so that wasn't a problem. Okay, so how did things progress? Like that's technically a mixed faith marriage. By the time a year's in and he doesn't believe anymore, you're in mixed faith marriage land.
Right.
And we're going to be doing a whole series. I'm really excited. We're going to be doing a whole series on Mormon stories on mixed faith marriages, not just interviewing couples that were in a mixed faith marriage. We're going to be interviewing couples who are in a mixed faith marriage. And we're going to do maybe 5 or 6 of those. So we're really excited about that. More to come. But how did you guys navigate that?
So I'm really good about living in the now. I don't worry about the past. I don't worry about the future. I just like to live right now. So that's really healthy in this circumstance. That definitely worked in our favor. But Sundays were a trial for me because in the beginning, I tried to make him go to Sunday school, and he would go just because I don't know, he loved me, and so he would go with me, and then he wouldn't go to priesthood, and then it got to just be so much work that I finally, I don't know, I guess I just had to accept it that I'm not his boss, I'm not his mom, that he can choose what he wants to do, and I'm okay with that. And I got okay with that him not wanting to go to Sunday school.
Okay, that seems too glib. Like, I'm okay with this 50-year former bishop not going to church anymore. I'm okay with that, or not going to Sunday school.
I think as long as he was willing to go to sacrament meeting with me.
So
that was kind of a bargain that we made.
Okay, so you were willing to bargain. So really quickly, and by the way, Alan Mount is listening to Mormon Stories right now. He and his wife, Katie, run Marriage on a Tightrope podcast, which is dedicated to mixed faith marriages. We're going to be having them be our first interviews. So just a shout out to Alan and Katie and their great work with Marriage on a Tightrope. There are spouses that stay rigid. In other words, it's just like, we made a deal when we got married, full orthodoxy, and it's like church way or the highway, no compromise. And you're now a huge disappointment, and I'm not even sure I love you anymore, and I may want to divorce you. So it sounds like you went pretty quickly to flexibility. And I'm just wondering, is that your personality?
That's my personality.
Yeah, she's super caring and easygoing, and that's her personality 100%.
To be flexible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even though you were really orthodox.
Yes. So what I figured is that we're taught agency in the church. Like that's a fundamental principle of Mormonism, and that he could make his own choices, but I didn't want him to try to influence my choices. Like, if you don't want to go to Sunday school, don't try to make me ditch with you because I want to keep going to Sunday school. So I guess that was kind of our compromise is you come to sacrament meeting with me and don't try and talk me out of Sunday school.
Because I would try to talk her to going with me somewhere every time.
Yeah, he would.
So you put up some boundaries.
Yes.
For him and for you and for your
Yes.
communication with each other. What about him sharing historical problems and doctrinal problems with you? Did you say, I don't want to hear that?
Pretty much.
You just
Pretty
said, don't
much.
talk to me about it.
Yeah.
And she told me to stop reading that stuff.
Okay, what was that like to be?
It was hard because I don't know if I actually agreed to not, but I didn't. I kept reading them.
It's almost like that porn thing where it's
Yeah.
just like, you're not allowed to look at that, but that makes you want to look at it more. And how can you not
So
look
I
at
felt
it?
bad
you
because
know?
I knew that she didn't want me to do it, but it was like an addiction and I couldn't not.
You
study
have
and
to.
look
You
at
have
that.
to process
Well,
it.
and I wanted him to, like, that was feeding his doubts, and I wanted him to feed his faith. I'm like, well, if you don't really want to read the Book of Mormon, there's the New Testament. Like, I know you don't believe the Old Testament, but there's the New Testament, you know? I just wanted him to just focus on something faithful, faith promoting, and not worry about it. So there's definitely lots of tears, and not lots, but
4 or 5 times.
yeah, it was just heartbreaking to me because I could see the road that we were on, and I was going to be going to the temple by myself. I didn't like it.
So really quick, I'll get back to that. What was it like being told just have faith or just read the scriptures or don't talk to me about it? Or what was it like, her responses? What was that like for you?
It was frustrating, but at the same time, I could understand her, and I didn't ever want to push anything, and I was never gonna. I was gonna kind of go along. I never liked to fight with her, and we never hardly do, and so I just want to keep peace between me and her, and so it was difficult because, I mean, I want to just shake somebody and say, look, this is the facts, just listen, and you'll see, but at the same time, I wasn't gonna push it or force it.
Because you valued what?
Our relationship and her being as a person and her own thoughts and
Right. So there are a couple common reactions to that. One is like desperation, like, I don't want any family member to be in a cult and I've got to save them all from like being harmed by the occult. That's one really common but very strong answer. Or just not even using the cult word. It's just like, it's not true and it's a fraud. And so wanting to save the family member. Did you feel that? Mm-hmm. There's another one, which is, this is my lover. This is my life partner. Number one, I need someone to talk to about this stuff.
We had those conversations.
And then there's also like, they should think I'm smart. They should, of all people in the world that they should believe and trust, it's me. Not only do I need someone to talk to, but they should care enough about me to want to learn and understand what's happened. What are they doing? Can you talk about any of those feelings?
every one of them. Every one of them.
And what's that like?
It's hard because it's just like you say, and I still go through these feelings today. That one day you are the bishop and everybody loves you and everybody looks up to you and they say how spiritual you are, and same in your family. And then the next day you're deceived and you've read the stuff and you believed it and you're just not very smart and you've lost the spirit and all of those things. And then at the same time, I want to save them, and I want to keep my love for all of them. So it's an impossible thing to do all of them.
Yeah. Did you feel betrayed by her, abandoned? Did you feel
No.
angry?
I never felt betrayed or abandoned or angry. I honestly felt like eventually that she would come around. And so I was just going to let it happen when it happened.
So you took the patient route and it didn't really affect your emotional intimacy too much?
No, I don't think so.
Not
That's
too much.
That's rare. I'm just telling you that's rare. I think that's rare.
No, I think our relationship was exactly the same. And
Yeah, we had those deep discussions about church, and I would always say, can we not talk about this? Because
so I'd go a week or two and not talk about it.
because I don't like contention. Like, I'm a peacemaker. I've been that way since my mom talks about me being a peacemaker at 2 years old. That's just who I am. So I just didn't want to talk about stuff that we didn't agree on. And that we have so much other things that we could talk about that didn't make me cry. That why would we want to? So, and then, and then he would tell me, but I need somebody to talk about these things with. You're my only person I can talk to about these things. And then I would feel bad. And yeah, it was awful.
Okay, so you're a peacemaker and you're flexible and you value. Did you value him over the church at the end of the day?
Definitely.
See, that's rare. A lot of Mormon couples, church first, partner second.
No, I realized, and that was part of the acceptance with the whole attending our meetings thing, was that I loved him. Bottom line, and he's my partner.
What did you
forever.
love about him?
I love him as a person. I mean, I can't do life without him. Like, he's my best friend. We do everything together. I'm not me without him. I've been with him since I was literally a child. So,
And so the idea of choosing the church over him
was not even a question. Like, if he was going to not choose the church, I could live with that as long as I had him.
And I honestly, as much as I was resigned to the fact I would continue to go to church for the rest of my life. If she wanted me to do that, I would go with her.
Yeah. And we came to that compromise that that I would never have to go to sacrament meeting without him.
So a couple things then back to you, Jared. Number one is having to kind of stay in a box and not have your partner come with you, and then having to kind of keep it to yourself. That can cause a lot of anger and rage and pent up emotional distress that you stuff through self-medication or eating or distraction or however it is that people self-medicate. So that's something I'm guessing you were having to cope with. Mm-hmm. And then not lashing out, because there's so many people go through the faith crisis and they're so angry that they can't help but lash out, keep digging, keep poking, keep trying to force, her or your kids to follow or to listen or to believe, not just because you want to save them, but because you don't want to lose their respect. So how did you cope with, number one, internalizing everything and staying quiet, and two, avoiding the very common tendency to keep poking and keep prodding your wife and kids?
I think I don't know that I ever did or ever have really coped with internalizing everything and just keeping everything inside. I've kind of been like that my whole life, where I just put things inside, and I think I just do that. It has caught up with me a little bit in the last few years, and then as far as, there's nothing that I value more than my relationship with my wife and my kids, and so I wasn't going to do anything to jeopardize that and force them or, coerce them or anything. It was going to be totally up to them.
He was just inviting conversations about issues that he had. And normally we kind of just blew him off and didn't want to talk about them.
So a very common human and Mormon tactic is just avoidance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's how our family members are today, still.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not all of them. Okay, so in addition to stuffing and avoiding, it is hard on non-believers to keep attending church. Like, over time, it starts to either impact your mental health or cause you to want to get more angry or outbursts, or it makes the Sunday experience really negative because you're having to hear people lie or say things that aren't true or say anti-LGBT things or harmful things. You just have to sit there and be quiet, or you're a disruption. So for some people, staying and attending church becomes unhealthy. How was that for you?
I felt that. I felt
What did it feel
super
like?
uncomfortable at church. I felt like I was being a fraud being there because I didn't believe any of the things that were being taught. And it was super difficult to sit there and listen to all that, and to know that all of the church members in our ward looked up to me and they respected me, and I kind of had to keep quiet because I didn't want to say anything to ruin everybody else's testimony at church. And so that's one of the reasons why I honestly stopped going to Sunday school and priesthood, because I didn't want to have conversations, and people would always ask me to put input and answer questions and things like that in those classes, and I couldn't do it anymore.
And that's honestly the reason why I got okay with him not going, is because I could see that it was unhealthy for him. I could see that. Like, it became like a literally physical thing that I could see that it was unhealthy for him. And so
At some point, what happened?
he just, like, the anxiety that it caused him, like, I could just and the way that it affected his mood or whatever, it just was not worth it. Like, it did more harm than good. And so that's why I came to that compromise is, I'm not even going to attempt to try to coerce him into going to Sunday school with me.
Okay. But sacrament meeting, yes.
Sacrament meeting, yes. That was not negotiable.
And part of what's hard from your perspective, from the non-believer perspective, is you feel like you're perpetuating a lie. Mm-hmm. Because to go there and just stay silent, everyone else has the impression you're still good with everything, but you're not good with everything. But
exactly.
But people can feel like you're living a lie just by being silent. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
Without even lying. Mm-hmm. And you can feel like you're
because
complicit.
part of me wants to get up there and tell the whole ward that this is how it is.
Yeah.
But I know that's not healthy or probably appropriate, but that's something I'd like to do.
Did you try to talk to anyone in the ward? Bishop Brick?
I have one good friend in the ward who I talked to a little bit about it. I didn't get into details, but he knew I was struggling.
And then how did you hook up with the Hinkies and others in the community? When did that
was
come?
after we officially let everybody know that we were out.
Okay, so what else about your story do you want to share? And by the way, let's come back to you for a second and tell us anything else you want to share just kind of up to this point in the process, Madison.
I think just more as time went on, like, you could kind of see that there's a problem that all us kids were just avoiding. And, like, I could see my mom softening and not being on my dad's butt to, like, go to every meeting. And, like, that bothered me, too.
That bothered you?
Yeah.
You're like, come on, Mom.
Yeah.
Keep the heat up.
Yeah, really. Because, like, I was like, she's okay with this. Like, why is she okay with this? Like, I don't know. I guess I could just see more and more changes happening.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So were you mad at your mom?
I mean, I never voiced it, but I was annoyed.
I just hate the fact that teens are going through distress and they can't talk to their parents about it. I hate that. So how did you deal with that?
Just shelved it, like I talked about before, yeah.
Did any of this start affecting your personal life, your private life, like just your behavior, your internal distress? Was it starting to wear on you or not?
I don't think it was, like, too bad. Like, he talked about he had so much anxiety. I was just upset and just wanted to, I guess, not accept that something was happening.
Right. So you just stayed in denial and avoidance?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Anything else you want to share about this dynamic so far?
No, I think everything's covered.
Okay. So when was the next change that was kind of significant?
So was it April?
You're going to sacrament meeting. You're not talking to her. You're not telling people, and you're just loving him. But why aren't you still there today?
Well, I guess as I realized how much it was hurting him, and like he would tell me, like, I have no one. You don't understand how hard this is for me. That I realized that if I'm going to be a good best friend, I'm going to be there for him, And so I started letting him tell me stuff without having a negative reaction, and just to listen and not have to try to fix it, and not have to, like, bring him back to the faith, but just let him be him and just tell me stuff.
So in your mind, it's like, hey, I'm going to stay a believer. I don't want you to try and change my mind.
Yes, but I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to let you get this out, because I could see, like, his mental health wasn't really very good. Like, all the anxiety.
How were you starting to know? How was he? What were you noticing?
Just, I don't know. Just not happy. He's not his happy self.
So he changed.
Yeah, and the anxiety, like his anxiety becomes physical, where he can't breathe, like he can't catch his breath.
Panic attacks almost.
Yeah, he'll be like that for days at a time, where he's just constantly just trying to catch his breath, and it's just like I could see that in him.
Yeah. And he had been pretty emotionally healthy the whole marriage.
Yeah.
So it's starting to.
Yeah, it was starting to really, really, really wear on him. And so I needed to be there for him. I needed to hear him, and I needed to listen.
And that's interesting. It's a little bit complicated because if I'm counseling a mixed faith couple, I do sort of put out this ideal that the believer can learn to, this idea of differentiation, that ideally the believer can let the non-believer doesn't necessarily have to have the believer come around, but the non-believer wants to feel understood and validated by their best friend.
Yes.
And to let them make sure that they understand that it wasn't because they wanted a beer. It wasn't because they were weak. It wasn't because they were offended, that they just wanted to be understood by the person that they care about most. And if they could just be listened to and validated, even if the person doesn't come around to their view, that is what most really want. And then if the person wants to keep believing and keep attending, well, that's just differentiation and balance. And so on the one hand, you did exactly what I sort of hold out as the ideal for a believer to do, which is just to listen without feeling like you have to believe or change your beliefs.
Right.
And the only problem is I think it affected you.
It did, yes, because, it definitely
So what happened?
did. Well, it just got to be that, like, I value his opinion and his intelligence, and I knew that he believed this stuff, and I don't know, and it got to be hard for me, and I told him, I said, we've had 6 kids, and we've put them on this path. We've led them by the hand, and we've put them on this path. How can we both just leave this path? How can we abandon our kids on this path that we put them on? Like, that's not fair. Like, I gotta hold my faith. That's what I would tell them. I gotta keep my faith for our family. Like, if you're out, they gotta have me. They need me to keep my faith. And so I felt.
Because you're feeling like if you guys aren't Mormon, what happens? What's the conditioning?
Well, we're not us.
You're not you.
Yeah.
Your identity, right?
Yeah.
You cease to be who you are.
Exactly.
Because your identity is so interwoven in Mormonism.
Yes.
Okay.
And who was going to be there at the temple with our kids? We have 2 that had never been married. Somebody's got to be in the temple with them. Like, we can't not do that. And so it was, So as I listened and was starting to have my own doubts, I was trying to cling to my faith.
So what doubts did you start to have? What things struck you as being significant? Because it's not always the same things.
I don't know. I guess that the fact that there was multiple accounts of the first vision, like that did trouble me. Not enough to like cause a faith crisis or whatever. But then all the other details around that, like, his own mother had never heard of the first vision.
But you didn't know all those things until after.
No, you. These are some of the things that we started talking about. And she only heard of the angel Nephi. I don't know. There's just so much.
Lucy only heard Joseph talk about Nephi, not Moroni.
Yes, just just little things like that, and that started to bother me. And then, honestly, it was like modern church that really kicked it in for me, because I just kept thinking, well, there could be a lot of problems with that, but this church is really good. And then the Joseph Bishop thing came out, and I just thought that was handled really poorly by the church. And then the Sam Young thing.
What about that?
Well, when he first told me, he said, "Have you ever heard of Sam Young?" This is, these are his tactics to get people to engage in conversation with him. And of course, I had never heard of Sam Young. I didn't know who he was. And so he started telling me about him and about some of the stories. And he said, some of these stories I wouldn't even want you to read. They're just horrendous. They're just so heartbreaking. And I thought about that, and I thought, you know what? Because he had been a bishop, and I thought, this is absolutely heartbreaking. Either these stories are true, and I have no reason to not believe that they're true, or somebody's lying and they're hurting their bishop. So either way, it's a lose-lose situation. And so I don't know. I just started opening myself up to the possibility that it might not be a perfect church. And then there was problems with the church history. And honestly, the crazy thing that actually caused the emotional break that let me actually say to myself, this might not be true, it was the meme that he showed me.
A meme.
A meme.
Was this from Missed in Sunday School, or was it some Reddit?
I don't remember where I got
Mormon
it.
Reddit meme?
It was,
What was the meme?
it was on Reddit or Mormon Stories Podcast community
What was
or
the
something
meme?
like that. It was a picture of an angel with a flaming sword, and it said an angel with, I don't remember. I actually just found the meme this week. I found it again. It's something about how an angel with a flaming sword could do so much good, like protect sisters in the missionary in the MTC from being raped, but instead it forces Joseph to have sex with women, and he showed that
With
to
girls.
me. Yes, with girls.
Yeah.
He showed that to me, and I said, and he was kind of laughing like, this is so crazy, and I said, that's not funny, and he said, no, Joseph Smith said that. He said that an angel came to him with the flaming sword, threatening his destruction if he didn't engage in polygamy. And I guess I remembered hearing that, but then putting it in that context, to me, it screamed sexual predator. And then Joseph Smith fell from my eyes as the perfect.
You're like, he made that up to manipulate Emma.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it was, yeah.
But even if it were true, I can think of a billion other better reasons for God to send an angel and a flaming sword. A kid's getting raped.
Right.
Someone's going to die. There's a hurricane.
Yes.
There's a tornado.
Yes.
Sexual predators
Yes.
or abusive husbands. Like,
Yes.
there's a
And so
million
that
better
is-
reasons for God to use
Yes.
an angel and a flaming sword. Where's the angel and the flaming sword when we really need it? Right?
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
so, but like Joseph Smith fell in my eyes. I opened myself up to the possibility that he might not be a prophet after all.
And how long ago was that?
That happened in April of 2018.
Okay, so we're talking about a year ago.
Yeah.
So a year ago, you start
Yeah.
saying maybe it's not true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we got.
Did you tell him, or were you scared to tell him? Or
No, we were having open conversations
Okay.
about this.
Okay.
Yeah. Like he showed me that meme, and then, yeah.
And how were you starting to feel when she started to come around?
It was very comforting that I could talk to her and she would listen and engage in conversation.
Were you torn at all? Because a very common reaction by non-believers is, I don't want to take their faith away. The faith means a lot to them. I don't want to hurt their faith.
A little bit, but not as much as I wanted her to know what I was feeling and see the truth and be able to.
And just be on the same page.
Yeah,
exactly. You just want to be on the same page sometimes. When the stakes are this high and it's your lover, it's your soulmate, it's your partner, you just want to be on the same page.
Exactly.
So you were kind of giddy and excited, or cautiously optimistic?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened from there?
So I didn't want to read any of his anti-stuff.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Whatever that means.
So I started with the Gospel Topics Essays. And then he said, go to Mormon Think. Well, but there was also Fair. And I thought, well, I should go to Fair because, they would, that's not anti at all, but they just verified all of the questions that I had. It was the same thing all over again, that I wanted them to tell me that this isn't true, that people are lying and this really is anti-Mormon and that somebody's making this up.
Yeah.
And they just admitted that it was true.
Right. And so then what happened?
Then we went into the stake
then
president.
we got called into the stake presidency to be released from our mission prep calling.
Okay, when was that?
Well, you
That-
talked to us before that.
Oh yeah, we did.
Okay, talk about that. Madison, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. So
Because we went to Arizona too.
as your mom, Madison, as your mom starts losing her faith, are you getting a sense for this? And how did the news get broken to you? Now the virus spread to your mom.
Well, it happened so quickly for my mom. Like, that was within a week that she went through all of that. And we really did not get a sense that she was losing her faith at all. Like my dad said, we went to Arizona and he talked a little bit about his concerns to my brother. and his wife. And then like on the way home, he started talking about the book of Abraham, and we read through that Gospel Topics essay. But like I still just had so much cognitive dissonance, like it's crazy to me. And I just like listened to the flowery language that the church puts on it, and I just like didn't let it bother me at all.
In the essay?
Yeah, that essay. Like we read through the whole thing.
As a family in the car?
Yeah.
On the way to Arizona?
On the way
On the
home.
way
On the way home.
So it was us, me, and my little brother, right? That was it?
Taylor was there too.
I don't think she went to Arizona.
And so as parents, what's that conversation like? Do we talk to the kids? Do we not? How do we talk about them? Did you guys have to talk about that, or did it just come out that drive home? Like
It
was general conference weekend, so we also had general conference playing as well.
okay, so this is spring or fall of 2018.
It's spring. It's
Okay.
April.
Okay. So general conference is playing.
Yeah,
And
so
how do you
it's-
go from general conference to talking about Book of Abraham?
That would be me.
Yeah.
So you're just like, I want some. And you got to talk to the microphone,
I
but
want some fair and balance to this.
okay. So you're wanting to balance. You're saying this is a general conference, and he's like, let's have some balance. Okay.
Yeah, but in all fairness, at that time, that general conference, you were not very comfortable with
No.
that.
Yeah, I was really having some serious
Okay,
doubts,
so
and
you-
I was actually doing more sleeping than listening to general conference.
Okay.
So-
it comes up in the car. You're looking at Book of Abraham.
That
essay.
was honestly just like another casual, like, gospel topic conversation that we had, just like he'd been having with us forever. And I still had no idea that my mom was losing her faith as well. when
Right.
we were
Oh, you didn't
talking about
know.
that.
And the essay didn't really penetrate you because you're just like,
Yeah. And we'd like talked a lot about the essays in seminary. Our teacher would like read through some of them like once a month or something. And I just listened to that spin that the church puts on it in those essays. And I just like didn't let them bother me, I guess.
Okay, so that's super important. So the concern or the fear around the Gospel Topics Essays, for those who don't believe anymore, the pro side is that the Gospel Topics Essays, in the case of your parents, might cause them to have doubts and to leave. The concern people have about the Gospel Topics Essays, especially as they've been taught to the youth, is that by introducing these controversial topics in their early teen years, seeding them with Book of Abraham issue, Peepstone issue, polygamy issue, First Vision issues, but wrapped in this very flowery, affirming context, that they would inoculate the youth. And I think that's the church's strategy, inoculate the youth in a context that they wouldn't lose their faith, so that they could just, when they're 20 or 25 or 30, go, oh, I learned about that in seminary. No big deal. It sounds like it kind of worked for a while.
Yeah, it really did. And like after I'd lost my faith as well, like I heard that quote that one of like the apostles, I don't remember who it was, said that yes, we're like giving these gospel topics essays to the youth
That was Stephen Snow, the
Yeah.
church historian.
to inoculate the youth, and I was just so offended because it worked for me.
So how did it work? Like, why didn't you go, oh my gosh, Book of Abraham, oh my gosh, First Vision? How did it work? Like, you're smart.
They just glossed over it and they just said, oh, well, it could be because this or this. And so I just said, okay, and I didn't give it a second thought.
Then looking back, how does that make you feel, or what do you think about that?
It makes me feel stupid. Like, I couldn't believe I didn't give it a second thought. And
Right?
didn't think these things through.
Right. Okay, so even when your mom joins the bandwagon, you're kind of impervious.
Yeah.
Okay.
In all fairness, though, she didn't know I had joined the bandwagon.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you didn't tell your kids.
Not at that point.
And again, why? Just to keep stability? Or
No, it was because I hadn't decided anything yet.
you were unsure.
Yeah, I was investigating. I
process.
was just looking into stuff.